the journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry. Consulting, so inspiring.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petry. Today with me, I have Dr. Millicent Musyoka. She is going to educate us all, including myself, on the culture and the environment of the deaf, who we see all the time, we go to the stores with all the time, and we share the same environment. So she's going to teach us on how to do that. Welcome to the show, Dr. Millicent.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that you are here, and like a lot of my viewers and a lot of my listeners know, my podcast is strictly about educating myself as well as educating them. And when we spoke on the phone for the very first time, you immediately started with educating, and I appreciate it so much. So we're just going to kind of relive that conversation, because when I first spoke with you, I said the hearing impaired, and you immediately corrected me on that. So tell everyone exactly how you corrected me on that and why was it important for you to do that.
Well, when I heard you say hearing impaired, it just ignited something in my brain. I was like, what? Is she going to call my allies, my friends, my students as impaired? Because they're not impaired.
Okay.
They don't need to be fixed. I see them as a cultural linguistic minority group.
Okay.
They're just deaf. They have a language, they have a culture, they have a community. They're just like me.
Right.
And so when you look at it from a hearing impaired perspective, you're taking a medical model perspective where you're saying, I can fix you. You're broken. You need to be mended, you know? You need to be corrected. You're not fit enough. You're not normal, so to speak. But when you look at them as deaf people or hard of hearing people, you see them as individuals. People that don't need to be fixed, people that are normal just like yourself. They are proud to have a language and a culture where they belong, although they are bilingual, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah, so that's what got me into like, she is not going to say that.
And I'm so glad that you corrected me on that, because I am a hearing individual. I have been around deaf people, but I guess I just never really knew how to interact with them because I don't know sign language or anything like that. So I appreciate that. So the first thing that we're learning with this podcast, they are not hearing impaired. They are just deaf.
Deaf or hard of hearing.
Or hard of hearing.
Yes.
Okay, so you spoke about it briefly in your kind of your intro. You said that they were normal. What, define that for me.
It means then, like everybody else, there is nothing that they lack. You know, other than the fact that they cannot hear for some of them, while for others the hearing varies, you know, with the hearing loss degree. But other than that, they do everything that we do. They pursue life the same way we do. And they should have liberty and freedom like everybody else. So that's how I look at them. So I don't like to use the words like most people do. They say, oh, she's not normal. Then if you say I'm not normal, the opposite, you mean that they are abnormal. So I have to ask myself, what is the abnormality in them, you know? Because I don't see the abnormality. You know, when I look at them, they do things just like I do. The only difference is they cannot hear me. But as long as I have a language that they understand, then we don't have communication barriers. We are two people that have equal capabilities. You know, it is the environment that can be handicapping and not the individual. And that is something we have to look at when we think about fixing them. It is not them that we need to fix. We need to fix the environment.
Wow.
The environment is what is handicapped, not them. Because immediately you provide an interpreter or yourself, you can sign like myself, then that environment is conducive, it has no barriers, it's not handicapped, and nobody is handicapped at that point. Everybody is just like the other person.
Everybody is normal.
Yeah, everybody is normal.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So tell me the difference between communication and language, because a lot of people see that as one and the same. Communication is language, language is communication. But you spoke about it being completely two different things.
That's true, because you can communicate without language. Communication is just the exchange of information from one person to another. And you can give information without language. For example, I can gesture and point, and you will immediately look where I'm pointing. I didn't use any language. You see, I can draw a picture and it can tell you everything. I didn't use any language, but I did communicate to you. I can make sounds, and those sounds tell you to do something. I can clap my hands, and you know what I mean by clapping my hands. And I wave. I have communicated that I want to talk to you. But you see, language itself is a system, is a communication system that has structure. It has linguistic structure. It has phonology, morphology, syntax, pragmatics, everything that any other language has. It's unique, and it is shared by a group of people. Language can communicate abstract information and concrete information, as opposed to communication. Communication may be so much more into concrete, things that you can see. But when you talk about language, I can give a whole lecture on forensic science with language that I cannot give with communication. See that? I can be able to give a whole lecture in mathematics with language that I cannot do with communication. And that's where, when it comes to deaf individual, we have a problem when people try to put those two things together. Because somebody will say, but I communicated with him, or I communicated with her. But when you do that, you didn't use language. And when it is particularly a child, and you do that, and you're only using communicating, pointing things, gesturing, showing things, real objects, you're only communicating. As a result, that child will experience language delay. And some children even go to severe situations where they experience what we call language deprivation. Something that, as a hearing person, I don't think I could be deprived of a language.
Right.
But a deaf child can be surrounded by people talking, doing everything, but still experience language delay and language deprivation. So the two things are very different. Language communication, completely different. I can communicate with somebody because it requires two or more people to communicate. But language, I don't need anybody to be there. I can use language by myself. I can do a poem, I can sing just by myself. But for me to communicate, I need somebody. So it's completely different.
I never thought about it like that.
Yes.
That's absolutely true.
Yes.
And, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, like, when parents communicate with their children just by the way they look. Or you're across the room and a parent will look at you and you will automatically know.
Oh, yes. Because I know when I was growing up and if I made some noise in the church, I only needed to have an eye contact with my mother, and it was a full sentence that says, wait until we get home. I'm going to get you real well. And I knew when to put back myself together. Yes. Because that was communication.
That's communication.
That was not language. And you see, how my mother looked at me is very different from another child. When they looked at my mother's eyes, they may not see that.
Right.
They may not read exactly my mother's body language, what she's trying to say to me. But if she opens her mouth and she says, sit down, everybody, including the next child seated next to me, has heard it means sit down.
Yes.
But there's only the look, which is communication. She just needs to make an eye contact and blink. And I know, I need to sit down.
Right now.
Yes, right now. And you see, another child playing with me in the church may not
They
get
will
that.
not get that. Correct.
May not understand when my mother blinks, she means I don't blink twice. If I blink twice, you get it really bad. But you see, that is communication. It's not language.
Yes.
And particularly, like I said, it's very, very important for us to understand how these two languages make a big difference to a deaf child. Because you could be busy communicating and things are doing very well at home. You communicate with your child, you point things, you gesture things, known within the family, those gestures that other people don't know because you invented them within your own family.
Right.
And you do that until the child is time to go to school. And the child arrived in school without language.
Yes.
Now, if you don't have language, there's no education.
Yes.
Education requires language.
Yes.
Because how am I going to educate you without a language of instruction? So when you arrive in school and you don't have a language, you find they're starting all over to learn language in school. And that affects their language development, their literacy development. And if you're not having the same literacy level, it means also when it comes to state exams and other exams, you're going to be behind. What does that impact? It sets your life to a failure immediately because your education is going to be affected. As a result, your examinations, your degree, if you wanted to pursue a degree, you're off. You cannot get a license for something. And we know education has a part to play in employment. So what does that translate to socioeconomic status? So from one thing of language and communication, you have defined this particular deaf child their entire lifespan, including to what they become. You see? So if you delay language, you deprive this child language, you're basically saying, I'm setting you up for failure. I'm giving you communication, yes, but I'm setting you up for failure. You will not compete on the same footing as the rest of your peers.
Now, I hear you saying that the importance of language.
Yes.
Explain to me the importance of access to language and communication for deaf children and deaf people in general.
Access to language and communication. Like I said, communication is just communication. And language is a component of communication. You see? Because language provides us opportunity to engage in advanced communication or abstract communication. So when we talk about language and communication in adult deaf, we are saying that because of language, they may miss important communication or information. Take for instance, you know, the South, we are used to these hurricanes and all that kind of thing. We have to think about how do we communicate to deaf people that the hurricane is coming? How do we communicate to them to leave or where to go and get help in terms of shelter? How do we communicate to them when all is done, the entire process of FEMA or, you know, claiming back their lives? How do we do that? If we depended only on communication as an angle without language. So we need language to be able to provide communication. And sometimes communication access is the problem. Because of the mode of communication maybe we have picked. For example, when I talk about the South and you know, the hurricane and all these things that we have, if we don't have communication access that is accessible to all people, including deaf people, then they don't get the information, you know, and then they get stranded. So we have to think about how we communicate in the weather. How are we communicating the change of weather, for example, in that particular instance? And it's the same thing with communication access when it goes even to the police force, for example. How do you communicate with a deaf person that is speeding or doing something on the road? You stop them. Right. How do you communicate with them? You have to think because you have to make sure there is communication access. And most of the time, people think like, oh, they can read my lips. You see? But even from research, we know that only 30% to 40% you can get from your lips. And we tend to think they are like superpower, that they can get the lips. And I do it with my own students in school. I say, do you think deaf people will lip read as a way of you communicating to them? Do you think you're giving them the access when you choose lip reading? They say, yeah, deaf can lip read. I said, no, they cannot all lip read. And even when they lip read, it's difficult to get the full information. And one of the things that I normally do is I speak with a voice, and I said, I want you to read my lips, like I would say.
Are they able to do it? Okay, I have no idea what you said. Do it again. You're saying my something.
My cat is sick.
Oh!
But you see, you missed the entire thing.
I did.
You could only get the first one. And imagine I'm only saying one sentence. Now imagine I'm giving you a whole information. My cat is sick because of blah, 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 and I want you to do blah, 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 blah. And you only got one word. And it took you time, remember?
Yes.
I had to repeat it to you.
And then I still didn't get it.
And you
Like
still
you
didn't get
eventually had to say it so I could get it. Yes.
Exactly. You see, and we think that they can do that. I tell my students, go and turn off your TV. And I want you to watch the news about the weather with your TV on and fix your eyes as close as you can to that
There's
guy
no
on the
way.
TV and tell me, what did he say?
There's no way.
I
There's
even
no
give
way.
them like things like I turn off the voice in a YouTube and I say, I want you to watch and write. This is your test. You know they can lip read. Now I want you to lip read that man giving news. And I want you to write it. And they're like, I can't.
There's
I
no
said,
way.
why do you think they have a sixth sense or they have this superpower? Are they aliens?
Right. And it goes back, I think, to when you were saying that a lot of people consider deaf people abnormal. So that goes back to what they can read lips and like completely understand and get a full understanding of what someone is saying in a
Exactly.
full conversation. Wow. I
Yeah.
can see how it like all connects.
Yes, and you see, like you said about communication and information. So, like I said, back to my example of the police officer, he stops the person that is deaf. The person rolls the window. And the police officer sometimes may look at the person and say, wait. And they start making even faces with their mouth, trying to make it as big as they can.
Yes.
That makes it even very difficult.
Yes.
And then don't forget, I don't have hair. If it's a man, he could have hair, mustache, which is
And you really can't see his
the
lips.
lips again. Or maybe the way he talks. His teeth don't open. We have people who talk differently,
Yes.
And
Yes.
so just like we have problems with the accents, it is even more difficult when I have to lip read you and look at your mouth, how your mouth is forming some words, and it's just difficult. Because how would you differentiate a simple word like but and pat?
And they're different, but they sound the same.
No, but you see, you can hear them. But look, if I was to say them without sound.
No.
They all begin with,
Yeah.
because that's a B and a P.
Yes.
And they all end with my teeth coming together, it's a T. So how do you differentiate such words? Or sometimes they start to yell, where is your driving license? I'm like, okay, you can yell until the
That's
moon comes
horrible.
down.
Yes. But again, they don't know.
I'm not going to hear.
Oh my God. So why do you feel like, and you talked about this with the police stopping a deaf person, what can the police department, the sheriff's departments, fire departments do to close that language barrier? What needs to be done to help?
I think they need professional development.
Okay.
They need cultural awareness, deaf culture awareness. They need basic tips communicating with a deaf person, you know. And I've talked with some people in the police. They have said they do get, some of them, 4 hours of professional development, but it's not like it's routine to remind them.
Okay.
You take it at one time, maybe at the academy or something like that.
And then that's it.
And because people say, oh, how often do I meet a deaf person? But you need to be ready.
Yes.
Because these people are here with us, you know, so we need to be ready.
You know what? It's just like insurance. You have insurance on your car, you have insurance on your house. Hopefully you'll never need it, but in case you do, you're ready for it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
So you're saying that in the police departments, the sheriff's departments, the fire departments, it needs to be
the
the
nursing
hospitals,
homes,
yes.
everywhere.
It needs to be continuous.
It needs to be continuous. I'm not saying that they have to be proficient in American Sign Language, but they need to have a system where they can start somewhere and kick it off with a better person, like bringing in an interpreter. But at that particular point when you're meeting this particular person, before the interpreter comes in, what are you doing?
Right. Now, let's talk about hearing privilege. Normally when you hear that word privilege, you automatically think about a racial privilege, white versus black, and that is normally correct. Tell me about hearing privilege.
You see, just from the word privilege itself, it means somebody has domination, whether they know it or they don't know it. It means somebody has benefits that they get that other people don't get, whether they know it or they don't know it. It comes with entitlement of who they are. So when we're talking about white privilege, we know they get it. Some of them are conscious of it,
Right.
Some are not. It's the same with the hearing privilege. The hearing privilege, like myself, I hear. I don't even think that I hear.
Right, it's just automatic.
But the first time I knew I was a hearing person, the first time in my life I realized I was a hearing person, was when I went to Gallaudet University. Gallaudet University is a university predominantly for deaf people, with a president that is deaf, vice president, and other administrative position being deaf people.
Where is that university located?
Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So when I went there for school, is when for the first time I knew I was hearing. And how did I know I was hearing? I went to a class and I realized I was a minority.
Really?
Yes.
Right, because everyone
Majority
else
was deaf.
Yes.
And then, like 3 weeks after starting school, I remember in one of my courses, the teacher said something in sign, because Gallaudet University, it's nonverbal, no talking, it's all sign language, completely. So the teacher signed something, the instructor, and so then I missed some parts of it. I had begun to realize I am hearing now. I'm different. I mean, all my life I didn't care that I could hear, but for the first time I was concerned that I could hear.
What?
And for the first time I realized hearing was not good enough.
What?
In that particular environment.
Yes.
Because when she signed whatever she signed, I missed some parts of it. And so the next day when I came to class, she said, put your books away, quiz is ready. I am being honest, I'm the kind of people sometimes who read last minute before the quiz. I hadn't read.
What?
And then I realized the same way they face communication barriers, I was beginning to realize my privilege.
Wow.
I began to realize my privilege, that it was automatic. When I'm walking in the streets, I hear things. It was automatic for me. You know, I began to realize in that environment, it was not automatic. Because for the first time, I got a C on that test, which was not my nature. And I was so miserable. But it all came down to the fact that there was no communication, full communication access for me. And so when you think about that, think of many opportunities that you have communication, access. You don't have to question. Just like we say white privilege, don't need to question, will they look at me if I stop my car here? Is this going to happen? For you, you don't question, will I hear? Will I not hear? Will I miss the information? But a deaf person is seated there and they're wondering, will I be able to get the whole information they're saying? Will I be able to understand the interpreter? Will they even bring an interpreter? And then there's this thing we call the dinner table syndrome.
Okay.
Because these problems of privilege begin right from home. You know, for us, white privilege sometimes doesn't affect us inside our homes.
Right.
Because inside our homes, we all black. You know, like me.
Right.
I'm talking about myself, right? I'm all black, so no white privilege. My brother is as black as I am, and my mother too. But a deaf child or a deaf individual, everybody else is hearing. So they're seated on the table during dinner, and they're talking and they're laughing. And the deaf child is missing the jokes. And when this child asks, what did she say? He said, it's okay, I'll tell you later, We call it the letter syndrome. The table dinner syndrome, whereby everybody at the table, they're talking and laughing, and somebody says, I'll tell you later.
Oh my goodness. That's
Or
horrible.
they turn and say, it's not, they're not talking about you. It's not important. Well, it's not important. She had, you had, she had, I didn't.
Yes.
So it begins right inside their own families when they are talking things. You know, and you're there missing information, a lot of information. You are like a second citizen in your own family. You get to know things after everybody else have known, if you are going to know in the first place. So that is what we call autism.
Okay.
Just like we have white privilege and we have racism, we have hearing privilege and we have autism. AUDISM.
Okay.
Autism, which is the power of hearing ability. You know, enjoying your power of hearing ability over others that don't have that power.
Do you think hearing people, realize that they are enjoying the power of hearing or enjoying their power of hearing ability? Because for me, I don't. Like, I didn't even realize it was a joy, you know, to have hearing ability. I didn't realize I had hearing privilege until I started preparing for this interview with you. And I was like, wow. And so that's where that question came from. I have hearing privilege, and I didn't even realize it.
You have hearing privilege. And just like some people are born within a white family and they don't get to know of their white privilege, it's the same thing with us.
What can parents do? You spoke about a deaf child living with hearing parents or hearing siblings or both. What can parents, grandparents do that are hearing that has a deaf child? What can they do to not isolate them, but include them in everything in all parts of family?
The key thing is they need to devise a way to use language and communicate. With language, you're able to interact. Without language, you isolate. So as long as they're not able to communicate with that particular child, then you're isolating that child. And even before you know sign language, for example, they need to have patience to explain things more than once. Because remember, they are trying to communicate. They are not using language. So because they are communicating, they need to be able to say it over more than once for this person to understand. And they also need to look for different ways to present to this person. They could even draw, they could write, but you see, this means in the middle of the conversation, you pausing to do this. And that is not a culture of hearing people. Hearing people, they cross-talk each other, you know, they don't take turns in talking.
It's true.
And parents need, once you know you have a deaf child, you need to sign up for sign language. That is a sacrifice you have to make to your baby. That's a sacrifice that the family has to do. You know, you have to say, okay, this child is deaf. What do we need to do as a family? And these classes are available everywhere, especially now with technology. They are free online. You can access a free ASL dictionary, which you can learn the basic baby signs, you know, which is very interesting now that I think about the baby signs. We have baby signs as a project.
Okay.
But the baby signs project focuses not on deaf children.
What is it? Who does it focus on?
Hearing children, to support them to, you know, to catch up with language. There are children that are hearing but have language delays of whatever nature. And so majority of the baby signs work, the project work, is geared towards developing baby signs for hearing mothers. And I've had people come to me. Even when I moved here in Beaumont the first time, I had somebody come to me and said, you know, my doctor recommended and said I could use some sign language as he develops his language too, so it doesn't delay. And so they just wanted me to teach them basic baby signs like mo, you know, yes, no, you know, milk, you know, basic signs. And you realize that by doing that, this child develops vocabulary.
Okay.
Vocabulary is a step towards language. They develop vocabulary they can build on when they start to talk, because it's not like they're not hearing. They're hearing, it's just that they're not able to express.
Okay.
You see? So you're giving them sign language to support their expressive language, because receptive, they're okay. But when it comes to deaf children, it's funny when I see a mother being reluctant to learn sign language for their baby. Oh, it's a lot of work. I'm working. I'm doing this. It's your baby.
Yes.
You need to develop that maternal attachment with your baby. Your baby needs to know they're cute.
Yes.
Because whenever you pick these other regular babies, oh, sweet, 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 you're so
It's
cute.
true. It's true.
But when you're looking at your deaf baby, you're just looking and wondering, what is this? And they get that. People think they don't get it. They get it.
That's the
Those
communication.
vibes come in. That's the
Yes.
communication. But imagine if you had learned just one sign. Oh, beautiful. And you say to the smile, oh, you're beautiful. You're so cute. You're so cute. Beautiful. You have already started to plant in that child the idea, I am loved, I'm accepted, I belong, I have a mother, I have a parent, and can build other things like security. But if we don't have a language, you just go in there, pick the baby, feed it, put it on the bed.
And that's it. And I don't know if you would know this, can hearing parents have a deaf child, and vice versa, can deaf parents have a hearing child? Okay, so deaf is not hereditary, or is it?
No, deaf can be hereditary.
Okay.
And can also not be hereditary. According to CDC, some deaf people, it's through genetic, the DNA and stuff like that. But for some, it's not, because 10%, only 10% of deaf children have deaf parents.
Really?
90% of deaf children in America do not have deaf parents, have hearing parents.
What?
So that explains to you. And in other developing countries, you can find that 95% of the children, like in my country, Kenya, they would have 95% hearing parents.
Really?
Yes. Because you can become deaf with complication in pregnancy, taking certain medicine, through accident.
Yeah.
And also, when you think about genes, even for passing over the deaf, being deaf, some of them are recessive.
Okay.
Some of them are dominant. And sometimes you don't know if you have a recessive gene
Until the baby gets here.
until the baby comes here. And the recessive gene can be there in the family line 2-3 years generation. So you're like, why do I have a deaf baby again? Nobody's deaf in my family. Yes, nobody's deaf in your family, but you've been carrying that gene. It was only waiting for a time to manifest itself. And finally,
Yes.
you're the one.
Yes.
You see? And sometimes it comes in like all the, like there's a family I know, all the girls are deaf. But any boy born in that family is hearing.
Really?
Mhm.
What?
It can be gender specific.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So when it comes to deaf parents, deaf children having hearing parents, that is like a usual case.
Okay.
Most of the time, that's what we see. 90% of hearing families have
A deaf
deaf
child.
children.
Okay.
While it comes on the other side, deaf parents having hearing children, it goes without saying. Majority of deaf people have hearing children.
So explain to us what is CODA, C-O-D-A, that acronym.
Okay, CODA means Children of Deaf Adults.
Okay.
It's one of the acronyms that has been in existence since the 90s. It just represents hearing children, not deaf children, because deaf children will be DOD, deaf of deaf.
Okay.
But CODA is Children of Deaf Adults. And now we have even come up with other acronyms, like SODA,
What is that one?
Siblings of Deaf Adults.
Okay.
Because you could have a brother or a
Yes.
sister that is deaf. You know, we are seeing other acronyms where it's just a husband that is deaf, a wife that is deaf. So I'm a wife of a deaf person.
Okay.
So those acronyms are in existence, and they just tells you that when you think about the deaf community, it's so diverse. Because all these people, the CODA, the SODA, they're all part of the deaf community.
If people wanted to learn or needed to learn sign language, I know you said you can Google it and it's on the internet. I feel like everything is these days. But where can you give us like maybe 1 or 2 specific places that someone can go if they wanted to learn sign language, or a phone number they could call to get help or tutoring to learn sign language?
Well, depending if they want it for professional or just for learning, or they just want to take a class. Because Lamar University does offer American Sign Language as a class for people who are not majoring in American Sign Language or don't want that as a profession.
Okay.
So they can take a class, they can check out how they can take as a part-time student and take a class with them. I know in the past Port Author,
Okay.
Lamar Port Author used to offer sign language classes. I don't know if they still do, but when I first moved here, I know they used to offer because they used to ask us to go and do adjunct work. Various community colleges offer sign language. I know majority of high school offer sign language as a foreign language.
Okay.
And so they're able to take like SL1, 2, and 3 because you have to go through SL1 through to 6. But you can take the basic SL1, 2, 3 from a high school community college. And I know some high school even offer for parents. So they can check out within the community. And there's a lot of, like here in Beaumont, there's a lot of deaf events that they can go. Because like I would say, you really don't need a class. When I first started learning sign language myself, I didn't go to a class. And I learned a lot. Because I believe language can be acquired. There is 2 ways, language acquisition and language learning. Language learning, you're going to learn it, where they're going to tell you the grammar, that, you know.
Like in the class setting.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I began with language acquisition. Language acquisition, you acquire it from the community. So by attending deaf events, you know, And somebody can Google just to see what's happening in Beaumont. We have things like silent dinners, things like going to a coffee chat in Starbucks where deaf people are having a silent coffee chat. You can go to something like that. There's so many events, and even participating in a church for deaf people. That is where I learned majority of my language before actually going into the classroom. So by the time I went to the classroom, I was just going there to perfect it, but really communicating for me was already existing by attending into these different functions.
Tell me about your education and your history with the deaf community.
It's a long story. I'll make it short.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I liked to be a scout, a Girl Scout, you know. And one of the things that we did as a Girl Scout was to do a good turn. We used to call it a good turn, which meant that you go somewhere and offer community service. And it just happened that I was always taken to community service, sometimes in the neighboring schools from my home, with some of them were schools with children with disabilities. So to speak, I met all kinds of disability other than one. And that disability I did not meet because I didn't know then, but I perceived it, and it just confirmed as I went through my education, it's an invisible disability.
Oh, which one is that one?
Deaf.
Oh, okay.
If I sit here and you look at me, there's no way you could tell by looking at me that I'm deaf or not deaf. You see what I mean? I can be passing you through the road.
Right. The grocery store, anywhere.
It doesn't write and say, oh, I'm deaf. But I could tell by looking at the blind, oh, you're blind. And I could tell by looking at the physically challenged, oh, you're physically challenged. Intellectually different, I could tell there's something with your brain. I could tell, but I could not tell about deaf. And so I never got anything to do with deaf until I went to the university. During my undergraduate, I was seated in a classroom, and there was somebody that was deaf I didn't know. So I was writing my notes, like busy writing, and then, you know, the way you write, your book is here, you write, and then you take off your hand and pause to listen, what is it trying to say? Just to get the right point before you write it. And so once I get it, I'll turn around and like, now where's my notepad? It has disappeared.
This really happened?
It happened to me.
Okay.
And I'll be like, I know for sure it didn't fall down because I don't see it. So I'll be like, where's my notepad? And then I'll turn around and there's this gentleman here. And he has my notepad.
Okay.
And I'll be like, what? Why do you keep on doing that all the time? And I would write. And one day, he did that for long. And one day, I couldn't take it no more. And I had to give him what I thought I needed to tell him.
Did you know he was deaf?
I didn't know. Can I tell he's deaf? He looks like me.
Right.
So I approached this gentleman and I said, you know, I think you're bullying me. And I can tell you're bullying me. And I know bullying very well because those days I was like 95 pounds and very small when I started my undergraduate. I was very, very young. And I look at this guy, he don't look small like me. So I knew one thing he's doing is bullying me.
Yes.
So I gave him a lecture.
Right.
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes, I did. I told him everything. And you know, small people, we can talk.
Yeah.
That's the only power we have.
Yes.
It's our voices. So I told him everything that was in my brain.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, I did. And after all that, this guy is composed. He reaches from his pocket, gets a note, and he writes,
Oh,
I
no.
can see you're so mad and you're very unhappy
no.
about something. But I'm sorry I did not get everything you said because I am deaf.
I would have just wanted to disappear into the earth. I would have wanted to disappear. What happened? How'd
You
you
can-
feel?
Exactly what you said.
Oh,
I felt like, okay, my world is about to break.
yes.
I just need something to. I felt embarrassed. The fact that all this time I was telling you, all I was telling you to understand what you're doing to me. And I was talking to a wall.
Oh, wow.
I felt stupid. I felt just terrible. And I felt bad. And I felt fearful. Because I come from a culture. Now that was now about my culture, now taking control now. I come from a culture where we believe, it's part of our practices, you know, our customs, that if you do something wrong to a person with disability or to somebody of low class or something, God will punish you and it will come to your generation.
Oh.
So I was like, Millie, what stupidity did you just do to your generation?
Right.
What did you just welcome? Problems?
Curses?
Curses? Because that is all it is about. It's a curse.
Yes.
Oh, I needed to fix it. Oh, I needed to fix it fast because I was not going to be the one.
To bring it into your generation.
And that was my only concern that time. And I didn't know a lot about these deaf people.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I knew is that I have broken a code. And it's like I've invited a kind of a curse and I have to fix it. And I have to fix it really fast. So I apologized. I had to apologize.
Yes.
And I said to him, how can I fix this? You know, now I'm under his mercy. I said, how can I fix this? And I think he took advantage of it too.
You probably should have.
And so we started a journey with him where I said, you know, from now henceforth, don't even worry writing the notes. I will give them to you. I'll make copies. Don't even worry. Just come to class and I'll give you copies of my notes. I'll make copies and I'll give you copies.
That was
And
so
he was
sweet.
like, sure. I said, yeah, just always get my notes, make copies, and I'm okay with that. Don't worry about it anymore. Instead of you trying to write in between, just don't worry. And you see, the funny thing of this is that nobody knew he was there, including the instructor.
Really? So the instructor was up there teaching the entire time and had no idea.
Not even him. The university didn't even know.
What?
Yes. He didn't say it. Would they know?
Right.
He didn't write it anywhere in his form. He decided not to disclose it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, nobody would know for him to get any service or anything. Nobody would know.
Right.
And he thought that was his best. He wanted to have his quiet life, and that's how we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And from him, I said, wow, as we, continue doing this business together, now it is a business. We have a deal.
Yeah.
As we started going through the deal is when I said, are you the only one who looks, like this?
Mm-hmm.
He said, no. There are others like me, but they're not exactly like me. They use a language that I don't.
Was he talking about sign language?
Because
Okay.
he didn't sign. He didn't want to sign.
Why?
And so I said, okay, can you introduce me to them? He said, I'll take you to their church, and from there pick it up, but promise, don't you ever do that kind of thing with me. So we don't have to sign. Between the two of us,
So how did y'all communicate?
writing.
Your
And-
language was writing.
And
Okay.
you'll read what he can read, but most of the time it was notepad.
Okay.
I write, I give you, write, I give you, like that.
Okay.
And I didn't want trouble. I had already made enough mess in
Exactly.
my life, so I didn't want another
Exactly.
mess. So we did that. And so he introduced me to a church with deaf people. to some few deaf people. And from there, I picked my own course. I mean, I went there, and the first thing when I saw the language, I fall in love with it. I was like, wow, I think I love this. And I learned it from them. Like, I didn't learn, I acquired from them. Naturally. Nobody telling me it's a mistake. When they sing, I sing with my hands the way they sing. And I realized I learned really fast that way because there was no pressure. And through music and dance and all these, social events, I acquired the language. And the rest is history. So after some time, I decided I was going to pursue it as my lifetime career.
And now you are a doctorate in deaf education, correct? Mm-hmm. At Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. Congratulations. That's quite a story. Does he have you?
We have never met again. After we graduated, that was it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me some misbeliefs about what the hearing culture feels about the deaf culture. What are some misbeliefs or things that we just have wrong?
Okay, we call them myths and misconceptions.
Okay.
And one of the things that we already said was people think deaf people can lip read, which is not true, like we have talked earlier. The other thing people believe is that if you have an hearing aid, or you have a cochlear implant,
you can hear, right?
You're fixed, but it's not true.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can hear everything. Different hearing aids would perform different purposes. For some, it's just to alert you there is sound in your environment. It doesn't mean you can hear everything. So they miss a lot. They still miss. So hearing aids and cochlear implants do not fix your hearing to a level of a hearing person.
Okay.
And that is something that even parents need to be aware. Sometimes they think, oh, my child now has a hearing aid, we're good to go. Now I've fixed you, you're hearing. No, you're not. You're still deaf using an assistive hearing device. And the minute it is out or the battery is down, you are as good as a deaf person. So that's one thing. There is also the misconception of deaf people cannot be good drivers. They cannot drive. Because there's all thing like, how do they hear the beep, beep at the back, somebody's somebody's trying to overtake you, how do you hear all the background noise? And we normally say they drive with their legs and hands, they don't drive with their ears. They don't need the ear to be under the steering wheel to drive. They just need their ears and to stay and look at the front. If the red light comes, they see. They don't need to hear it beep.
Yes.
They don't need to hear it beep. They just need to see it's red, go. Or stop, green, that kind of a thing. So they don't need the beeping. And in fact, I always tell people, one of my best drivers for me is my deaf friends. Because I know they're not distracted on the road like I am. I'm easily distracted by music.
Easy.
I'm easily distracted by the phone ringing.
Easy.
I'm easily distracted by this guy that is trying to yell behind me.
And honking the horn.
Yes, to move.
Yes.
But you see, once they sit behind the wheel, they are behind the wheel. Only once in a while would they, sign to me and say, you okay? Or talk a few things with their hands. But they are really focused. So that's a misconception. The other thing is that they have is, people think that deaf people are less intelligent. But that's not true, because I know very intelligent people that are deaf. People that have pursued law, people that have pursued medicine, engineering, causes that I couldn't pursue myself.
Yes.
And they're deaf.
I'm sitting here wondering, and again, I know
but
this
parents
is my...
don't know that,
My hearing privilege, I know, and a red flag for me, how can a deaf person be a doctor or an engineer? Don't you have to continuously have language and hear what's going on?
They have language.
They have language, yes.
American Sign Language is a language.
Exactly.
It's not a communication tool.
Right.
It has grammatical structures and everything, capability to teach anything. I teach in the doctoral classes, research methodologies, and my students conduct research. And I do everything in sign language. And when I teach the hearing students, I teach exactly, I use the same words, the same everything as I do with my hands.
So you can be a doctor and be a deaf person,
Yes.
or be a lawyer.
You
and
can be anything other than one thing. You cannot hear.
So that's the only thing.
That's the only thing you cannot
That
do.
seems like a big part of it. And I know it's my hearing privilege speaking and my ignorance speaking, but that just seems like a big part of
It
those
is
professions.
not. It is not.
Okay.
It is not.
That's amazing.
You can be a psychologist. I know so many therapists who are deaf, psychiatrists that are deaf. And then mental health illness specialists that are deaf. They don't need all that.
Wow.
You know, I tell people, even an Uber driver, I have an Uber driver that, drives me once in a while when I don't need to use my car, and he's deaf, right here in Beaumont.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God. I'm having so many aha moments with you, as Oprah Winfrey say. My goodness.
They can do anything. I mean, look, for example, the president of Gallaudet University. Highly intelligent woman. And my former president when I was there, highly intelligent man. Has published a lot, done research. We even had, during Barack Obama's time, we had one of the faculty in Gallaudet deaf work under Barack Obama for an attachment to support him as an assistant. She was deaf. Very eloquent, intelligent.
Yeah.
So the only thing they cannot do, they cannot hear. But it doesn't mean their brain has any problem. And you see, that is the problem we have with marginalized communities, even including black people. For a long time, people thought our IQ is lower than a
Right.
white person IQ. And you know very well, like I do, that
That's
our
not
IQ
true.
has no relationship with our skin color.
Absolutely.
But for a long time, people said it that way, presented it that way. But today they don't. They have come to realize that's not true,
Right.
And it's the same thing with deaf people. I believe a time will come when every generation would realize that that's a lie. Their cognition has nothing to do with the fact that they cannot hear. They are intelligent, smart people. In my own department, we have several faculty professors that are deaf. In Gallaudet University, a lot of professors are deaf. In Rochester Institute of Technology in New York, you can find lots of professors there that are deaf.
Really?
Yes, University of California, you can find.
Are they teaching hearing students?
Yeah, with an interpreter. Like in Lamar University, they teach hearing students with an interpreter. Yeah, the only thing you need is an interpreter that is able to facilitate communication access, like I say. When that person is missing, the environment is handicapped.
Right.
Not the deaf professor.
Oh my goodness. That is crazy.
I know.
And I apologize. I feel like I gotta fix it and make it right.
You have to fix it and make it right.
I apologize because unconsciously, I did not realize that deaf people could do so much. Okay, let me change that. That deaf people could do anything that they wanted to, besides hearing. Unconsciously, I did not know that, but talking to you, you have really brought it to my forefront and made me realize that, okay, you had these biases and you didn't even know it.
Yes.
You have this privilege and you didn't even know it.
Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
It's something that we don't know. We always say, oh, me, I don't have any bias.
Yes.
But we have this unconscious bias.
We do.
You know? And sometimes because of this unconscious bias, we might become microaggressors.
Okay, explain. I know what that word means. Explain,
like,
what does that mean?
Sometimes you don't plan to hurt the person, but you've already hurt the person.
Yes.
For example, I always give my students this example of you're walking and there's a glass on the table. Accidentally, you didn't mean it. You hit the glass with your elbow. It falls down. It's broken. You didn't mean it.
Right.
But it's broken. The
Yeah.
consequence has been done. It's broken. It's the same thing. We don't mean it, but sometimes we say things or we ask them questions that can hurt their feelings. For example, I look at you and I say, "Oh, Crystal, you don't even look black. You don't act black. You are denying my identity."
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes you meet them and you say, "You sure you're really deaf?" "Come on, I'm deaf."
Yes. And I shouldn't have to prove it to you.
That I'm deaf.
Yes.
Or you meet with me and you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're deaf." I don't need pity.
Right.
Those are comments we make and questions we make. Just like, somebody comes to me and say, "Millie, is this your hair?" "It is my hair. I bought it, so it is mine. It's my property.
Absolutely.
You don't have to ask me how it got on my head, but it is my hair."
Absolutely.
And
And
you
don't
have no
touch it.
reason to touch it.
Don't touch it unless I say you can touch it.
Exactly.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's the same thing that we do. And sometimes we forget, we the hearing people, that our privileges can make us do the same things we don't want to be done to us. Particularly if you have a marginalized identity, like being black, and you know what you've gone through as being black, going through the entire issue of being marginalized
Yes.
and not validated, but we are coming in to validate or to refuse to validate somebody else, and we don't even think about it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we, unfortunately, and I don't think I've ever said that in any of my podcasts, but Dr. Millie, unfortunately, I have to wrap up
Yes.
this interview.
Yes.
And I do not want to. You hear me? I don't want to wrap up this interview, but we have to. This is probably a big question.
Yes.
Can you give me one or two specific things that hearing people can do to make it easier or be more inclusive of deaf people?
I would say become an ally
Okay.
of deaf people. And the only way you can become an ally of deaf people, take time to know them. Inform yourself who they are. And give them the same opportunity. And when you see something, like they say something. If you see something is being stereotyped or somebody is just presenting their bias, say something. And third, do not generalize all deaf people as the same, because deaf people are so different. We have, even within the deaf community, we have deaf people depending on their hearing level. We have deaf people depending on whether they are black, white, their race, which is another story of double whammy. We have deaf people that are LGBTQ, so to speak. We have deaf people that are Muslim or other religion. So we have multiple marginalized identities. And when these identities intersect, the impact is even more severe. You're black and deaf and male. You're black and deaf and women. And for example, just last week, just to wrap up, we were in my social justice class. We were talking about Say Her Name. I don't know if you know about the Say Her Name movement.
Yes.
And one of the things we were looking at was say her name for that woman that has gone through police brutality or violence that is not just black, but is black and deaf.
Wow.
That people tend to forget.
Wow.
And so my students would say her name. And they will give the name of the student. And one student would say the story of that person and how they met their death. So we have to remind ourselves, when you think about anything, including social justice, think about that death with other intersecting, marginalized identities that make their problems go beyond language and communication issue to an issue of those identities that they have acquired that are already marginalized.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Millie,
It was a
for
pleasure.
helping me see my own biases and showing me how to fix them. And for my viewers as well, this has been such an informative and educational interview. I cannot even describe.
You're welcome.
I cannot even describe. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And the information, so if people are wanting to know how to contact at Lamar for American Sign Language, I'll have that information in the description box below. So you can call, you can reach out to them if you want to learn. And really that helps you be more inclusive as well,
Yeah.
learning the language.
Yeah.
So my final question, as we say goodbye, who do you think, and I know no one's probably going to compare it to you, but who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
When I moved to Beaumont, other than being in my career in deaf education, I pay a keen interest on the next generation. I'm a Christian.
Okay.
And one of the things that I do is I pray for the next generation, because looking at America, we are concerned with the next generation of young people that are coming up, irrespective of the race, that is affecting our school system. And so when I'm thinking about the next person, I'm thinking of the next person that will talk about that generation that I'm passionate about.
Okay.
And I would say top ladies of distinction.
Okay.
Top ladies of distinction, Nietzsche's chapter. I have seen what they do with particularly young people in high school, supporting them to join college, supporting them to become entrepreneurs and to pursue their lives with meaning, mentoring them through various hurdles of life and making them better a citizen. So I would say inviting the leaders of top ladies of distinction would be a recommendation for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching and listening. I pray that something was said that would help educate you as you continue on your journey. You can find this podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And always know, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Crystal Petry consulted, so inspiring, pushing you to your dreams. You can be anything. Oh, it goes with